How's it going, everybody? Welcome to this week's LUMIX Live. We're basically going to go through kind of covering a bunch of stuff that I've troubleshot for various different users across Reddit and over on Discord. Because these questions have come up, but the more I racked my brain, the more I thought, I don't think I've ever clearly covered some of this stuff. I know some things we've talked about, with different ways that you can customize and set up the cameras across our line, but figured, why not? Let's just do a coverage of this. I know some of it I most definitely haven't. So we're going to go through that stuff. I've got my S1 Mark IIe hooked up here so we can kind of go through the menus. I can show you where these different settings are. We can explain what they do. But at the same time, if there are things that you're running through with the various cameras, we can collectively go through them, and I can walk you through getting them set up. Just like always, these live streams that we do, you can ask us questions. You can tag at LUMIX USA. I will try to get through as many of the questions as we can. As you can see, FC and FC and I'm just going to say 1934 have done. It makes it a little easier for me to see them, so then we can try to address them. Before we go into that, I want to remind those of you in the United States about LUMIX Pro Service for the US. We have a red tier, which is free, so if you've recently purchased a LUMIX camera, you can follow the QR code right below me, or a link down in the description. Get yourself registered, get you your 3-year extended manufacturer warranty. But then if you're someone who prefers maybe a little bit higher level of service and support, you could always take a look at upgrading into the Platinum tier. That is a paid level service, but that's going to get you the 2-day repairs with next day shipping both ways. You're going to get 20% off out of warranty repairs. So that's like if I've dropped a camera, broken a lens, something like that where it's clearly not going to be a warranty repair. You get a little bit of a discount on those kind of service and support programs. But also you get annual sensor cleanings, EVF clean, lens calibration, firmware updates, like a lot of the maintenance stuff that maybe you don't really want to handle yourself. Maybe you want to send them in throughout the year. You have a couple opportunities throughout the year to send out some equipment. And then last but not least, you also get access to a membership hotline. So if you are someone who prefers to speak to someone for service and support, you've got access to that, which would be Monday through Friday, 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. Eastern time within the U.S. So if that's something that interests you, scan the QR code below or click the link down in the description. Yeah, let us take a look at a couple of the questions that have come in so far, and then we'll jump over into the camera. And again, as I said, as I've seen a bunch of people just jump on in the last minute or so here while I was giving my rambling. If you have a question during the stream, make sure to just tag at LUMIX USA. This way I can see it. And we can kind of go through and answer some of those questions. But FC asks, can I force camera to be in AF on near all the time? In recent photo shoot, I got a bunch of photos where camera was focused on the background, even when face tech was turned on. So the AF on a near or far is only a kind of toggleable thing. If it's something that you want, what I would recommend at that point is maybe adopting kind of like a back button focus method. This way you can program the AF on button in the back to be AF on near or far, whatever one you'd want. If you've never done those kinds of things before, you have to set this one a little differently because out of the box, when I press AF on in the back of the camera, it's going to trigger autofocus. I would go into the camera menu. I would go down into the gear icon, which is the custom menu. Then I would go down and look for the FN button set, which is going to be under the operations page 1. Go to FN button set, and then here you'd have to set it for photo or video. There are a separate set of settings for playback, but in this case, we'll talk about photo. Just scroll down to where it says AF on, and then come in here, and then just change it to AF on near shift. So now what that will do is when I press the AF on button, it's going to prioritize near shift, as you can see. So it's looking near first, as opposed to just kind of the neutral, which will kind of prioritize the closest part that it was. or far, where if I go back in and I change this to far, you should see that it's going to push out first and then come in if I push the right button. Yeah, so you see it goes out far. So that's probably how I would set it up for you, knowing that there's not really a direct kind of way to force the system to always prioritize near or far. It may depend on, you know, the kind of scenario that you're in. That's usually why I have... like, if I'm going to be using a system like that, I'll have it set under different function buttons, because then I can just toggle it on the fly when I want to. So, let's see here. Next question was, is there a way to fast delete images in playback? I would love the ability to hit playback, then double-click the trash can twice to move on to the next image. It's an interesting idea. It's one that, I mean, I can definitely pass over to, you know, kind of our planning and our software team. I would be willing to bet that something like that in the cameras is probably, if something like that were ever to be added into a camera, it would most certainly not be a default option. There's too many times, I think, where... you could accidentally like double tap to, you know, maybe not thinking you pressed it or something like that. I can just see that there would be probably too many use cases of accidental use. But it is one of those things that, you know, I could see a value in having it there where, hey, maybe at least it's an option. We do that with a lot of the functionality in the cameras where it'll be like, hey, you know, default may not be how you want to use it, but options are in the menus to make things, you know, kind of adjusted to how you want to shoot with it. So it's definitely something I can pass to the planning teams and stuff and say, hey, this is what some people have been asking about, and then just kind of see where that goes. A change or an addition like that, I would estimate it's probably going to take a pretty large amount of people asking for the exact same thing for it to be moved anywhere up in a priority list of things that we want to do to the cameras based on feedback. So I wouldn't hold my breath anytime soon for something like that to be added. However, actually, now that I think about it, there is an option. So if you go into the, and I have to do it actually this way. Can I do it this way? Because I don't have a card in here. So if we go in here, there's no... Yeah. So there is an option in here. If I go to the playback menu, go to the others option, go to delete confirmation, I can change this to say yes first. This would basically mean that, like, if I go into playback and I'm looking at an image and I hit the trash can to delete it, it's going to still give me the prompt, but you can default that the selected answer is yes instead of no. So it still would be a 2-button operation, so you'd press the delete button and then you would just press the menu button. You wouldn't have to press the delete button, then toggle to yes, then press the menu set button. So that might be a workaround for you. At least within the existing kind of framework of how our menu system works. Let's see here. David says, recommend LUMIX Lab workflow for GH7. Picture profiles work well, run and gun shooting, indoor and outdoor contrast for versatile workflow. Not sure what you mean by the comment, David. If you can expand on what you'd like to know or what you're trying to say, I will address it again. Piku says, I'm just shortening it to Piku. Any recorder besides video assist that accepts S1II, S1R2 raw output, any monitor that supports full touch to focus of the S1R, S1R2, S1II. So yeah, the video assist 12G products support RAW over HDMI, and there's a bunch of Atomos recorders that support ProRes RAW over HDMI. I don't know of any of the touch control stuff within those monitors, though. To be honest, I haven't followed a lot about Atomos, and I know that they're doing some stuff with touch control. I would have to look a little bit further into it to kind of see what would be going on. But you do have the Blackmagic Video Assist options. Make sure it's the 12G option if you're looking to do RAW over HDMI. Or at bare minimum, the Atomos Ninja 5, that series, the Ninja series will support it. Just make sure that your recorder firmwares are all updated, that if you're going into the Atomos side of it, that you have the RAW over HDMI stuff activated, so that you'll have access to recording to it. PV says, quick question regarding compatibility. If the LUMIX S5 Mark II uses Bluetooth version 5 and the DJI Ronin RS3 Pro gimbal uses Bluetooth version 5, why won't they pair? That's probably more up to what DJI does for support on the gimbals, as far as adding in communication databases, whether or not they have enough of a call to want to add the cameras. The other kind of catch there is, like, you could have multiple devices that are all running the same, like, versions of Bluetooth, but it all does come down to software, whether or not the devices have the, kind of general compatibility to, communicate with each other. Just because they have Bluetooth is not the only requirement. There does also need to be coding involved, testing involved to make sure that, those kind of communication things work. Even on the S1II series, my understanding is that it's the RS4 Pro series, RS4, and the RS4 Mini that have Bluetooth support with the S1II series. I haven't heard or been informed of anything with S1II series having compatibility. Yeah. Bluetooth timecode, how does it work, and how can I use it on the S1R2? Love is a Battlefield. I will have to come back to that one. Ironically, this is funny. I was actually on a meeting the other day, and I was reminded to go pick up my Bluetooth timecode generator because I left it at my local dealer while they were taking a look at it. So I would rather get that and then be able to actually show you how to connect them than try to describe it. It's a little weird if it's not, if I can't show you how to do it. But since we are off next week, 27th, I'll try to make sure that I get that device back by the 4th, and then we can cover that on December 4th for the stream here in the US. Yeah. You should know better. Even if there is stuff that I know or that I don't know, I wouldn't be able to talk about anything. So, it's here. Okay, thanks. What was your question before? Hit the playback twice. Oh, okay. Yeah, I mean, some different camera bodies can have that kind of stuff for sure. Others, I mean, it's definitely, this is regarding the being able to double tap to delete. Like I said, it's something that I'll definitely bring up to the team, because I can definitely see why that could be a bit faster for the process. So yeah, I'll have to take a look at that. Time-lapse Ireland. If you are seeing any kind of issues like that, there's a couple steps that I take just to double check. Is one, do a factory reset on the camera. If you've already got a bunch of stuff set up, like all your buttons and stuff like that, do a camera save, then do a factory reset, put it in the mode that you're seeing a potential issue with, double check if it's still there, load your settings on, then double check again if it's still there. You'd be surprised how much a firmware, especially after firmware updates, that just a simple reset can clear up a ton of different little things that may crop up because of a conflict in settings. If something like that is still happening after that, I would contact your local Panasonic service and support platform to have them kind of take a look. They're going to want to take a look at the camera at that point. Yeah. Have you had a chance to get more info about the Ari Lab and Log C3? I have not, unfortunately. Right after this, I'm actually on a call, I think, as long as Matt is not on the road right now, where I can double check and kind of see about the Ari Lab stuff. Hey Sean, I'm working on a CGI reel and I 3D modeled an S9 as a fun project a while ago. Am I allowed to use that spec project in my reel? I don't know if we would have any kind of say on that. If you created everything and it's your work, I don't see how we would have anything to do with that. But I'm also not a lawyer. I don't know any of that kind of stuff. But, I mean, if you created the work, I don't see anything that... Nothing makes sense to me, so... Our Vision Movement. Sorry to bring up another brand, but we were testing the ZR and noticed how it communicates with the A10 Mini to show on air. Do you think Lumix could add similar HDMI communications? I would have to double check because we do have there are options in our HDMI menu. I just don't use HDMI. Other ATEM stuff. I use an ATEM Mini here, but I don't use any of the kind of I don't actually use ATEM software or anything like that. I literally just use it as a glorified USB webcam tool for switching. But we do have HDMI rec control out as an option in here. My understanding is that that's tied towards the what is that tied towards? That's tied towards the triggering for external monitors. I don't know if maybe the ATEM stuff has a slightly different need for the communication, but I can bring that up and kind of see. Like I said, it's not something I use. It's not a function I use with the ATEM for the way I have it. Can I change the gain in my G85? I can't find anything in the settings. Kraken Lens, what gain do you mean? Do you mean audio gain? Do you mean ISO or sensitivity gain? Stuff like that. Yeah. David Martin Graff says, what's the best way to use Lumix Lab to create a single custom picture profile that works for both indoor and outdoor run and gun shoot so I don't need to do much grading later? So as you kind of, I mean, if you've done grading or kind of editing of footage, you'll know that grading footage indoor and outdoor, it's not going to be I can just put one thing on and it's going to work in both scenarios. That's not really how it works. The best recommendation I would have, you could use Lumix Lab for this, but if you're in enough where it's, you have to do grading and you're going to be doing a little bit more of a complex type of shoot, I would probably recommend using something like Resolve to color grade two separate looks, one for in, one for out. So take two shots, how you would normally film indoors, how you would normally film outdoors, color grade them the way you normally would, and then use Resolve to export out that grade as a .cube file in 33 point. You can then take that, send it to your phone, load it into Lumix Lab. That'll let you tie that LUT to Vlog or Arilog, whatever system you're using. This way, you can literally at that point just program it and say, "Hey, this is my indoor look. This is my outdoor look." They're already pre-graded so that they're designed to kind of match. But even there, you're still going to have to make adjustments as you kind of go. Because not every outdoor scene is going to be lit the same. Not every indoor scene is going to be lit the same. White balances come into play at that point. So you can get them close, but I'd recommend, like, you're probably going to do a lot of the grading first on the computer side. Like I said, you can do this in lab as well if you want. I think it's probably just easier to do it on a computer at that point. The apps are great, but they're not always going to be like a catch-all to do everything for you. So I would do the grade and everything on the computer for an indoor and outdoor scene to try to match them as close as you can, or whatever it is that you're going for. Send them to your phone or tablet. Load them into lab. This way you can assign them to a color profile so that when you put them on the camera, you can just use the real-time LUT system. And then that should help balance out some of that stuff for you. That being said, that's a pretty good transition to one of the things that I prepped that I wanted to talk about today. Because I had gotten questions about, kind of how do I customize my color profiles, the looks, so similar to like what you were just asking, but how do I, one, not have to necessarily just rely on real-time LUT, or I want to really kind of add some additional tweaks to a particular profile that a LUT can't carry over. And there's a lot of different controls that you have within our cameras and ways that you can customize it. So the first thing that we're going to do is we're actually going to go into the custom menu again here. And I'm going to go all the way up to the top. We're going to start up here. I'm going to go to photo style settings. I'm going to show and hide photo styles. And then I'm going to come down here and I'm going to keep scrolling. And one of the things that you're going to see is that I can come in and I can turn on all of my additional My Photo Styles. There are up to 10 of them available in the LUMIX cameras. We only show, I think, 3 of them out of the box. And that's just to keep the menu from being super, super long. But if you're someone who, doesn't utilize most of these profiles, say, all right, for photo, I use Vivid as my kind of baseline for it. I never use Natural. I don't use L Classic. I don't use Flat. I don't use this one. I don't use this one. If I'm in the monochrome side, I primarily only use Leica monochrome. I've never used the Cinelike profiles for my own use. I will use Leica 709. I will obviously use Vlog and Arilog C3. And then as far as Leica 2100, truthfully, I don't use it because the kind of work that I shoot, it's just not relevant. But I want to be able to have a bunch of my photo styles. By doing all the things that I just changed here, by flipping a bunch of these to off. So say I even turn this off. Say I turn... we'll leave it at that. I turned a whole bunch of these off. Now, standard color profile will always be visible. You can't turn that one on or off. But now, if I go back out and I actually go into my photo styles, what you'll notice is I'll go Arilog C3, Vlog, Leica monochrome. I missed one, so we're going to go back and change that. Go back in and make sure that I turn off all the ones that I don't want shown. Go into... so monochrome will also always show, just the basic one. So if I come in here, we go to photo styles, you see I have Arilog C3, Vlog, Leica monochrome, regular monochrome, Vivid, and standard. Those are the only profiles that show right now. But I now also have my photo style 10, 9, 8, 7, all the way down to 1. This kind of customization can make things a little bit faster in some cases, especially if you just, in general, don't use the normal kind of built-in profiles, because I still have access to all of them. So I can come in here to my photo style. I can come in and say, well, I want this photo style to be based on, say, Cinelike A2. But maybe I want to change some of the settings. Maybe I want to come in here and I want to adjust things like sharpness or the noise reduction that's applied to it. Maybe I want to use Cinelike A and I have a LUT that I apply to it. I can customize each one of these photo styles to my particular use case of it, and then not also have to be burdened or bothered by all of the other color profiles that are just default on the camera. I can hide them if I never use them. It's kind of the same thing if you look at some of like our autofocus modes. In our camera, we have the ability to also come in and change and hide what autofocus modes are shown. So I can come in here, say I don't use tracking, so I turn this off. I'll use full area. I don't really use zone, at least the zone horizontal vertical. I use one area plus. I don't use pinpoint. So say I want to turn all of those different things off to where it's one area, full area, and then I'll always have just the regular one area as well. Now when I go in to look at my focus points, I have all the other ones that I don't want to utilize. They're disabled. So the menu's much cleaner. I don't have to go through and like remember exactly which ones I wanted to use. I still have my ability to jump in here and turn my AF detections on and off. I can go in and still select which objects and subjects I want to detect it on its own. So you have more of that flexibility for actually customizing the camera to how you want to use it. You're not just stuck to how we've got it default. But going back to the color profiles. So one of the things that you may have noticed is, so if I go into the My Photo Style here, you see I've got Arilog C3 set up as one of my banks. But if I scroll down, you might notice that my dual ISO, my ISO number, and my white balance are all selectable, which in your cameras you may notice they're not selectable. So what gives? Within that initial menu here under the settings icon, or setup icon, or sorry, custom, which is the gear, under photo styles, you'll see that there's a My Photo Style setting. You have the option to add effects, which in this case I can add sensitivity and I can add white balance. This allows me to save a default within the My Photo Styles for these particular two parameters. But also I have load preset settings. What this means is, how do you want the system to load what's in the My Photo Style depending on how you manipulate different parts of the camera. By default, the camera will be set to where if I do a power cycle, then the My Photo Style settings that I have saved out, so this is all the customizations that I've made in the My Photo Styles, will stay as default. I typically come in here and I turn this off because if I make a change to anything, it's usually because I'm changing it on the purpose, although I can see how some would say this would be a little counterintuitive to it. So let's just assume that this is on for now. And then you also have changing photo style. These are the different triggers which will load what the initialized settings were for that particular profile. So those two things being covered, if I go back, and now we go back into the My Photo Style, this is where, let me set that back to normal, this is where I get that ability to now not just assign the color profile, I can assign whether or not when I select in this case, My Photo Style 1, that it's going to force it into high ISO range. In this case, it's going to force it to 3200 ISO. If I want to change a white balance, I can come in and say, hey, I know that for this particular style, I want to set it to incandescent. And then maybe I come in here and I want to assign a particular LUT. In this case, I'll throw ARRI 709 on it. Maybe I want to bring the opacity down just a little bit. We'll change that to 90. Now those are all the defaults that are added into this particular look. Now I can hit the display save button. I can change the title of this, so I can come over and rename this to, let's just change this to ARRI Basic. So now that title has been changed, I will save current settings, save it to My Photo Style 1. Now you'll see that My Photo Style 1 has been changed. It's now called ARRI Basic, and it's all the default settings that I've had. So it's incandescent, it's with the LUT applied, It's in 3200 high ISO. All set. But then I go to my photo style 2. Let's say I want this one to be the vivid profile. Let's say I want to bring noise reduction all the way down. Let's say I want to bring sharpness up a little bit. Let's say I want to make this one daylight. I'm not throwing a LUT on this one, but I want a little bit more contrast. Let's give this a little bit more of a curve for even a little bit more contrast. And say we're good there. Do this one. Go back in, and none of that stuff changed because I hit the wrong button. So let's do this. Let's just make these changes real quick here. And then let's do low. Let's bring this to let's bring this to high. And then let's bring this to 640. And then change this back to daylight. Now I'm going to do display, save current settings. I could rename it. We'll save this in as number 2. Now we're good to go. I've got a second setup that's got all my adjustments made into here. It's got my different ways that how I want that particular image to look, and you see that we're at 640 ISO. If you make these different little changes into the different My Photo styles, if I go into the quick menu, and you can kind of see, let me shift my camera up here a little bit. You can see that in My Photo Style 2, you'll see I've got daylight, 640 ISO, and then I've got my different adjustments that I made. If I go to the ARRI log, you'll see that I'm in incandescent, I'm at 3200, and none of those other changes are there, but it is also still showing me with the LUT. If I go to My Photo Style 3, which is a default, everything's in auto white balance, it's auto ISO. The purpose of these modes are to just give you that kind of customization. How do I want the camera set up? What makes the most sense for me? But this is different than necessarily setting up the C1 through like C5, 8, I think is what we have on the cameras now. This is doing it based off color profile. So again, I don't really have to worry about digging through a bunch of different color profiles because I can just cycle through up to 10 of these now. And then the standard ones that come with the camera, I can have this limited all the way down to just where it's standard and monochrome as like a photo option. And then I have my vlog, so my 2 log profiles if I want to shoot in log. I will have my LUT option, and then I'll have my photo styles that are all fully customizable. It's all just designed to make things faster and quicker to be able to go in and customize this so that you're not spending a bunch of that extra time having to read through what's there or remember, how long it's going to take to change between some of these things. Let's take a look at some of the other questions that came in. Where did we go? Which is better to protect highlights and shadows in 4K 120? HEVC, eye dynamic range, or Rec 709 real-time LUT? Camera set to fixed ISO with AV or manual exposure. I don't want to color grade in post. I would not use eye dynamic, period. Eye dynamic burns in a whole bunch of stuff to it. You're probably better off doing 4K 120 and potentially like a Rec 709 with real-time LUT. This, I think we've talked about this a little bit, or a lot over the last couple of streams, FC. It's not just a 709 conversion. It's more important is that you use like a correct 709 conversion. If you really want the best highlights and shadows, you're going to have a correction LUT that's going to be designed to take the log footage and maximize dynamic range. It may not look exactly how you want it, though, because you can do any of that stuff in LUT. The difference here, the kind of thing to keep in mind is that at some point, to speed up the general function, while using things like real-time LUT and stuff like that, you're more likely going to have to at least grade 1 clip so that it's exactly how you want it. Otherwise, you end up using, stuff from, the various different, LUTs that are out there. It's where, obviously you could also just check, LUMIX Lab and look at the downloads option and see what's available. Maybe one of those is, kind of the balance that you want to get out of it. But I typically find that you're probably going to have, you know, at least one click or one clip that you're probably going to have to at least color grade to the way you want it. And then once you do that, that LUT that you create, you could just send over to the camera and then apply that over your log footage. That'll, I think, if all you're looking to get is a Rec. 709 output, that's going to be the best way to do it. If you just don't want to have to worry about grading in post. So, to be fair, most of the time that I'm shooting, you have two kind of ways of doing it. If I know that I want to maximize dynamic range and what's displayed to an end user, that's where I would just shoot at that point. Just shoot HLG, hybrid log gamma, but shoot in the one that's, you know, designed for it. Because that is a deliver ready grade. That is a deliver ready flagging and everything, so that if I take that piece of footage, I throw it on a phone, I put it on a TV, I view it in most computers, it's just going to automatically trigger and show me HDR, which means I'm going to see more dynamic range than 709. Since HDR is going to be Rec. 2100. Rec. 2100. If I'm not shooting HDR, then I'm just doing 709, and I'm just controlling where I want my highlights to be. You still have some control in the options here, like I mentioned. You know, if I'm setting everything up in the My Photo Styles and I'm using, you know, let's go to 709 here. One thing you'll notice is that I don't have contrast or S-curve control. It's just not part of what that is. But you'll notice that I have knee control if I come in, and my camera's covering it. So here's where I can come in. I can do auto, or I can adjust these parts. I don't really follow enough about 709 and how the knee settings work, but you've got those controls in there as well. So, are there any plans for DJI and Panasonic to have greater compatibility on software? Example, all the functions of Raven Eyes, but in the Lumix camera, Lumix have active track, but that's it. I honestly no clue. David Martin Graph, no clue. When using a white balance card, color checker passport in photo mode, custom white balance shows Kelvin values. Is there any way of seeing custom white balance Kelvin values using gray card in video mode? I have to double check. I don't think in the photo mode it shows you the Kelvin values on the screen. I can check. Let's go into here. Ah, cool. It didn't reset my screen. So if I come in, if I go into custom white balance, let's just do this. Yeah, it's not showing me what the white balance number was. If I come in and I set a Kelvin value, that's a different story. I can come in and I can set whatever Kelvin value I want. So if I move my camera quick, I can come in and I can adjust the Kelvin value to whatever I want it to be. But that's going to be a little different. You also have that in video. So if I go into the video settings, it still didn't break it. If I go into the video settings, I go into white balance, go into Kelvin, and select, I also have that control. So the custom white balance option, where I'm going to like meter that kind of thing, that's going to embed that stuff in the metadata. It's just not necessarily going to show it in the menu. The reason you see it on the screen now is because if you look at the white balance options that I'm in, I set my custom white balance in this particular case. So I came in and I said, realistically, I should have set this to 6500. I set it to 6500, so I did that manually. Any idea if Adobe are going to add Lumix cameras to Lightroom Tether? No idea. You'd have to talk to Adobe for that. Does color checker white balance card need to be in focus when taking custom white balance? No. In fact, they actually probably most white balance cards. the way I was taught was no, they shouldn't be in focus because you don't want shade that necessarily like shadows or defects or things like that if it's not a perfectly gray card. I usually don't have that stuff in focus when I'm doing it, and it should be fine. Let's see. Hi, Sean. Fell in love with S9 on second sight. Programmed crop zoom to a custom button. Although I reset the crop, it jumps back to crop whenever I switch on camera. Any solutions? Thanks. I'm not super sure about that one. I'll have to play around with my S9 to see if I can replicate what you're doing. So you say you programmed crop zoom to a custom button. Although you reset the camera, it jumps back to crop whenever you switch on the camera. Yeah, let me do a little digging on that because I haven't run into anything like that. Yeah. Yeah. So let me do a little digging on that one for you. For S series, does the video mode waveform reflect vlog footage, or does it change based on the monitoring Rec 709 LUT used? Some like this, stuff like this is things that we can. Well, actually, I can't because we don't output waveform. Well, let's take a look real quick here. So if I'm in log, well, so for one thing, if you're on the S1II Series cameras, if I turn false color on, it is turning the LUT off to give me the exposure based on log, which is the correct way. That's how you should be doing it. You should make sure that your exposure and everything is set properly for log, and then your LUT should be created or generated based on the fact that log was shot correctly to begin with. If you do it the other way around, you're misexposing log, and in a lot of cases, this is where I think some people run into those issues where they shoot log in low light and they're adding a whole bunch of noise because they're underexposing, because you're trying to make the look exposed properly, but you're missing the fact that log is then being pushed down into the shadows, which just makes your shadows noisier if you have to bring them up because now it doesn't really look exactly right. So your waveforms, tools like that are based off what the log footage is being captured, so that your main file that is then going to be graded is being done correctly. So yeah, that's how that system works. I never hid the profiles. It's amazing. Yes, hiding the focus modes and photo profiles or the my photo styles that you don't want to use is one of those things that's like, oh, it's so nice. I'm so surprised that we never really talked about it all that much. It's probably more one of those things that I talk to people at trade shows and events and I mention it, but I don't think I've ever mentioned it on here. Software suggestion: have the facility to connect LUMIX cameras to LUMIX LabraFlow via Wi-Fi only. This would free up USB port on the camera to control a DJI gimbal. Not necessarily. The way the communication protocols work, Wi-Fi and USB still have some overlap, at least with the way our cameras are. So, any chance for S5II, S5 or S5IIX series receiving firmware update that would allow to close the shutter when changing lenses to protect sensor from getting dust. The features available in the S1s. No, the S5 Mark II series will not be getting that functionality. I can definitively, hand over heart, state without a doubt, those cameras are not getting that function. They will not get it. They cannot get it. The reason the S1II series was given the ability to close the shutter for like the kind of protection thing is because we had to re-engineer and change the materials that the shutter blades were made out of. For the longest time in the industry, shutter blades were always designed to be as thin, as lightweight as possible so that you could move them pretty quickly, and you didn't have to necessarily overbuild the motors that move the shutter blades. As more and more people had requested that they wanted the ability to close the shutter or close a shutter over the sensor when changing lenses or powering off, that meant that a redesign had to be done. We had to change the blades out to use a carbon-infused material. That does a number of things. It makes them a lot stiffer. It gives them a lot more resilience. But that also meant that the motors had to be updated as well. So the actual motor that actuates the shutter mechanisms. And on top of it, it also increased the thermal resistance of those shutter blades. The shutter blades on an S5II, S5IIX, and earlier cameras were not up to what our temp standards were for exposure to pinpoint sunlight. What do I mean by that? Is that if I took the camera and I laid the camera down, say I'm shooting an event, I put the camera down on my bag and it's facing up into the sun, well, as you would expect, when this is facing down and you've got light shining through it, you're now pinpointing light onto the blades or to the sensor. The reason why it's not that big of a deal on the sensors, very different materials. You've got glass, you've got silicon, things that are, a little bit better at dissipating thermals, where the plastics materials or the polycarbonate materials have different kind of response to heat. So they can warp, they could burn. So on the S1II series, those blades were just never designed to do it, and because they're not designed for it, we're not adding it. There's too much to risk adding it. Too many problems that likely you'll probably run into without realizing it. This is one of those kind of situations that's the same as don't use your cameras in a situation where you have laser lights. Lasers, because they're pinpoints of light and they're high energy, can burn out pixels on a sensor. So if you film at a club or at events where they have laser lights, don't point your camera in towards a laser light. Or if it's coming towards you, point the camera down. Do not let a laser light focus in on your sensor. You will get burned pixels. There's plenty of cases online. Same concept with the shutter blades. There's nothing I can say about future planning, potential firmware updates, no potential in future firmware updates, all of that kind of stuff. So if you've been on these streams long enough, you know that I don't have comments for any of that stuff. Ruckus, in your experience, does LUMIX Flow external monitor work hardwired when mobile doesn't have signal Wi-Fi? Yes. Yeah. Because the way... If I take the Flow app and I plug it into the camera, it's hardwired. It means I don't need Wi-Fi, don't need any of that stuff. If I then want to use the multiple external monitors functionality, they're doing basically, I don't think it's peer-to-peer, but it's the easiest way I can describe it, is they're directly connecting to each other. So you're just sharing a hotspot, which means that they're all on the same network, so they can all be seen together, and then sharing the signal out to multiple displays. So it works even if you don't have any direct internet connection. Mondo! Yes, Mondo. Hey, how's it going, Armando? Hey, Sean, I shoot primarily with manual lenses. Yes. Can you please tell the devs to have a feature to remove the focus box? It's really, really distracting. Even when you have a clean feed, it's still visible. Yeah, I've had a lot of people asking about that kind of stuff. I'll have to press with them again. I think almost every time we've had any kind of event or meetup or anything like that, I think it's been brought up to them, but I'll press again, Armando. Just out of curiosity, what is the reason of the long buffer clearance time on the S1II, S1R2? It seems like it should be faster since it has CF Express and can do internal Apple ProRes. There's differences in... So, let me break this down into two kind of components. So you have video recording bit rates, and then you have photo rates that you're going to transfer at. There is differences in pipelines as to what has to be written to the cards, the speeds, the general pipeline for video, and then the general pipeline for stills. In the still side, you run into a couple different kind of points of slowdown. You have, if you're shooting just raw, you have the fact that it has to write all the raw data, put it into the buffer, go from the buffer to the memory card, and that can vary depending on operating mode of the camera, if you have dual cards in or one card in, what kind of card you're using, how that card's reporting back to the camera, the bus speed between the internal memory and then how it writes out to the card. Those are all different components that can come into play. In a video stream, your bit rates and stuff like that are just handled differently. The entire pipeline is different than photography. So it's not an equivalent to say, yes, you can shoot 4.2 gigabit per second in video, and I can do it to CF Express or I can do it to SSD as a constant video stream, versus I'm shooting photos that have to go into a buffer and then get written out to the card. They use two different streams on how it's output. You can see this in some cases where there are things like sorry, I just saw one of the other comments pop up. You can see this in situations where if anybody has ever had a file that corrupted or had a problem where like power was dropped out of the camera and then you get a corrupt file. What you'll see is that video recording is done more in real time to a card. It's not 100% real time, but it's more in real time and then segments out. It's why in video you have the ability to do segmented recording, which will write up to a 1 minute to a 10-minute clip, and then it will close that clip, start a new clip, and you could record like that if you want. But if you've ever had a video file that did corrupt and you repair it, you may notice that like at the end, you may miss a few minutes of the recording because that segment was where either a corruption happened, if the card failed, things like that. There just isn't any info there because basically the file wrote, saved, wrote, crashed, and then but never actually closed that segment. That just poses a different way that they work. So yeah, they are different. Our systems have always been optimized much more in the video-oriented space. I think we can all agree and kind of understand that's how we've always, for the most part, optimized our cameras. But as far as still shooting go, most of the kind of misconception about you run a CF Express card, so you should be able to do it, none of that is actual logic in this case. Truth of the matter is the vast majority of memory cards that are out there from a stills perspective are overkill. You get a lot more benefits from faster, higher end media cards on the actual like transferring side, on getting them into the computer, where you've got 40 gigabit connections, things like that. On the camera side, you want to have a fast enough card that's going to make sure like, hey, I'm not going to, have the card as a bottleneck. That's why in general, as far as like SD cards go, we recommend V60 and above. V60 cards are going to cover pretty much every opportunity, every situation that you're going to in general run into. V90 is going to be for the more hardcore, more, dedicated modes that you need in the camera. CF Express cards, yes, give you a whole bunch of functionality as well. You get a more physically robust card, you get faster offload speeds, but I don't know of any camera that truly requires all of the fastest, highest end cards that are out there from a photography side. Maybe the top tier sports cameras. if you're shooting RAW plus JPEG, but all cameras have some sort of buffer. The difference is to whether how much storage is put into that, which increases the cost of the camera, what the speed of that memory is, which again increases cost of the camera itself. Was the camera designed to be a sports shooting tool? None of our cameras are designed to be sports shooting, so we're not going after, you know, the top high-end tier sports cameras. So, but for general casual sports photography that I've done with it, motorsports, family shooting, like family photography with it, street photography, I've never had any of those kind of issues with the buffer as far as going down on it. So, great topic would be talking about focus ring degreeability. Yeah, sure. So for those that don't know, if we flip our camera into manual focus, one of the things that you'll see if I come into the custom menu again, go down to the lens options here, is you'll see we have the ability for focus ring controls. Now I'm on the latest firmware with the latest firmware for the lenses, which adds some different controls for the way you control this. But if I do focus ring settings during manual focus, you'll see I can change my manual focus to be linear. And then I also have the ability to come in here and go to set, and I can change the degree of throw. So this lets me go from, say, hey, I want a 90-degree throw. I want this to be linear. So I can make real quick pulls near to far, depending on how I want this to go. Makes it a lot easier to repeat those throws. So now I don't really have to, you know, kind of think if I'm on the variable side where it's speed dependent. But with the newest updates, we've also added in the ability to change the direction. So I can change which direction is near to far, depending on, you know, potentially what system I came from, that kind of thing. There is the other settings there for being able to assign controls to a lens function button if it exists, or what you want the ring to do when you're in autofocus. So, like, I can have this come in here and say, like, I want my focus ring to assign and change my color profiles when I'm in autofocus. So now if I do this, now my ring will on the fly change my color profiles. I don't know how useful that one is, especially for video, but you've got that option if you wanted it. Let's see. I got time for a couple more questions, and then I have to wrap up for today. Showcase. I don't like Martin Scorsese. Probably not, Art. Are Frame.io and LUMIX Flow different versions of the same thing? No. LUMIX Flow is a workflow tool, so designed for camera control, monitoring, storyboarding, scripting, and the ability to export out an XML file so that you can take all your clips that you've already pre-rated and then load them into your program the way you want it. Frame.io is a camera to cloud solution that is also integrated in with our cameras. So you also have that ability to, as long as you got an internet connection of some sort, whether it's tethered over your phone's Wi-Fi or like a studio or office internet, whatever you want to use. Frame.io allows me to take that footage, proxy video files, raw images or JPEG images, and while I'm shooting them, I can have them being sent up into the cloud. Think of the Frame.io side as a lot of collaborative work. So if I'm a creative team for an agency, I would be out creating content, having it loaded up into Frame.io so that the client could be reviewing, nearly in real time to say, hey, I like these shots. Hey, I need you to reshoot that one. I'm not liking this look, if they can't be on site. For social media platforms is also the benefit of if I'm loading up proxies, and the internet is great for saying this, that 1080p is perfectly fine for social. Well, okay, sure. We send up 1080p proxies. Those can be used for social. So I can send them up with a LUT applied, or I can send them up as vlogs so that the editor off-site could start an edit do all the color grading, get everything ready to go, and then when the project's done, I can then send them the main files, and then they can relink everything and export out the project. So Frame.io really gets a big benefit in that side of the use cases there. Sorry. What would it take to get 422 OpenGate mode? Is that sensor tech? We've talked about this a number of times throughout the stream. 422 OpenGate 1, to my knowledge, I don't think anyone else is doing it. And if they are, it's usually in much, much higher end cameras. Although I have to look at some of the most recent releases. So for the amount of heat generation, from my understanding, the amount of heat generation, one, to do 422 versus 420, especially in an H.265 compression, can be substantial. The other fact is, I would recommend looking at people that have done 420 versus 422 in a number of various different use cases and listen to their opinions. There's only so many times I can say this, that I am willing to bet 9 out of 10, people that are using modern cameras, if you need 422 10-bit or you need, RAW for it, you're gonna buy and use the tool that does that particular mode for you. Luckily in our cameras, we have RAW if you truly need the ability to have the most amount of color, the most amount of flexibility for grading, albeit arguably not in OpenGate. But also, we've had people do blind tests. There are blind tests online where it's guess which one's which, even with, footage provided. The vast majority can't see the difference between 422 and 420 outside of very specific use cases. Does that mean that it's stuff like that's never going to happen? Of course not. But the fact that, one, we have still the only cameras that do higher speed OpenGate, 5.1K 60. It's 420 10-bit HEVC because that's one of the most widely accepted and widely processable files across the industry, across editing programs, software, optimized across the board like that, especially these days. 422 10-bit HEVC is, while support is coming there on Mac OS, you have to have a 50 series graphics card from NVIDIA, to my understanding, to even be able to have any kind of hardware acceleration with it. So the vast majority of people aren't going to be doing it. Oh no, definitely no, it's not a malicious thing. It's just, you do run into a lot of things with going that next level up, going up to 422. Most of the time it does just kind of come into the point of, it's a point of diminishing returns in a lot of cases. Again, not to say that it's not valuable. It's just that for a lot of things, it ends up just not being worth the addition. It's the same kind of, I'd say, conversation with all introverse long op codecs. A lot of people do need all intra codecs, and that's perfectly fine, obviously. Certain types of filmmaking, certain types of creation require it, especially if you're working with things like CG, or you're working with green screening and a lot of that stuff. But at the same time, we're in a kind of point where the software side has been able to pick up so much of that, where it's not as big of a deal as it used to be maybe 5-10 years ago. So now it's down to what's a little bit more efficient, what gives you a better balance of image quality versus performance, what gives you the better balance on the editing side, how much horsepower do you need on the back end side of capturing versus how much horsepower you're capturing in the front side of it. So yeah, that's kind of where a lot of that stuff kind of goes. It's a whole set of conversations, I think, in general. Probably need to be had more in the industry is like, what are the benefits of the actual different recording modes, and can the vast majority of people actually tell the difference? And if you put them in the hands of an actual color grading or a colorist, we've done it with the GH7. I think Kofi did a great video that, to be fair, we sponsored with the Arilog C3 and putting from the S1 against an Ari, and he's got his comments in there about what someone who shoots with an Ari has said about it. So, yeah. Any update on getting vertical anamorphic D-squeeze? I would love it. I don't have any follow-ups on that stuff. Is there a way to have Flow app flip right side up when I turn my iPad to portrait mode? I like to be able to split screen. I have to follow back up with the software team on that kind of stuff. I've asked a lot of questions about that stuff. To be fair, we did just push an update for the S5II, S5IIX, and the GH7 that actually corrected some support. Brennan, nice. There are, what was I saying? For the difference of, yeah, so there was a firmware update published for S5II, S5IIX, and the GH7 for LUMIX Flow. That was specifically to correct some issues with if I'm connected to Flow and then the app crashes or I close the app, various different kind of like if Bluetooth was disconnected, although that was corrected in the October update. That recent update added corrections for that. So now if you're using Flow and for some reason the app closes, I instinctively, when I stop using it, I just open up my opened apps and I end up closing them. I can't stand having apps opened on my phone. That would stop the recording. All that kind of stuff has been fixed in the update. When assigning... okay, cool. I got time for these last two questions. When assigning focus ring function on a lens, how does that work with the clutch of Panasonic zooms? I.e., can you control aperture and then still pull the clutch for manual focus? Typically, yes. So the clutch will override whatever you're doing, because that is actually putting that lens into a mechanically coupled option for manual focus. That overrides everything, because that even overrode before we did all of this. That would override the variable control for manual focus, because you had set points and calibrations for it. So yeah, on those, as long as they've got a firmware update for it, you'd be great for it. So, Arts, I just did a whole breakdown about that humans can only see 1 to 10 million colors. 8-bit is 16, and unless we're shooting blockbusters, we're doing intensive VFX. 10 or 12-bit is, yeah. It's a fascinating side of, I think, the content. Yes, you always want to shoot for maybe, one tier above where you're planning to deliver. This way you've got future and kind of all of that is kept in mind. But even as it sits now, I would say the vast majority of the image quality you can get out of our cameras is pretty comfortably exceeding where I think we are even remotely maximizing for the most of us out there. All right. With that, y'all, I am gonna have to wrap it up today. This was awesome. Lots of cool conversations. Lots of awesome commentary. If I didn't get to a question, or you didn't feel like you could or wanted to ask the question on the stream, feel free to drop it in as a comment after the video is posted. I'll try to answer them in the comments, like in the comment field. Otherwise, we will save it and address it on a live stream itself. If you like these conversations, hit like, subscribe if you don't already. Share these platforms out to anyone that you think might actually enjoy being parts of these conversations, or may have those questions that it's like, hey, it's just easier if you just go ask them. I know how fun it can be sometimes to try to explain something to somebody, but then it's just like, I really don't want to do this. That's why I'm here. I can explain things for people. If you don't already, check us out over on Discord. Link is down in the description. We have the conversations over there. I will typically try to be over there and check out any kind of commentary that people have. And if it's a question I can answer quickly there, I'll try to answer it. Otherwise, I'll typically try to address them in the live streams. What else? We will be off next Thursday, as it's Thanksgiving here in the US. So I'm going to be taking some time off. And then we'll be back on December 4th, with the live streams again. So, outside of that, thanks y'all. Thanks for the awesome conversations. Like I said, if you didn't get your question in, drop it in the comment section after. If you have recommendations or just want to have your voice heard, drop it in the comment section. Definitely love seeing the conversations. And yeah, hope you all have a great weekend. Have a great rest of your day. If you're in the US and you're partaking in Thanksgiving festivities and all that kind of fun stuff, I hope you have good time with family and friends, whoever that may be or wherever that may be. Yeah, look forward to coming back after the break and diving back into all this stuff. So, all right, I'm out. Later, everybody.